So I'm starting with a little presentation. Most of you already know Christian because you have got the opportunity to meet him this morning during the Coffee with the Expert moment. I just ask everybody to turn off their microphone because I can hear a bit of noise in the background. Now should be better. No, I'm still hearing a bit of noise.
I don't know if it's my microphone that reiterates.
Okay,
Could be, yeah.
Doesn't matter. So yeah, thank you for coming back and welcome Manuela that is joining us in this webinar. So as I introduced this morning, this afternoon we have got the pleasure to have Christian with us again, and he will present a specific webinar related to the usage of data for improving the city and the future of city. So how life is lived by citizens and how data-driven solution can help and support this implementation and this future, if you want. So I leave the word to Christian. Thank you again, and I wish you a nice presentation.
Thank you so much, Eduardo.
Thank you.
So yes, well, you know the background, for me at least, and Montem. Our tagline is building the cities of the future, which is also kind of the topic for this this talk. So what are we actually building and testing in the future? I think there's a microphone. There we go. Yeah. For how do we actually make these data-driven cities? So just a quick recap. What we do. Montem develops intelligent infrastructure, and that's kind of like smart city IoT. We do it on different sectors, water, urban planning, and so on, energy as well. And we're quite specialized in developing or having research projects that actually results in physical products or software products. So we digitize or we create entirely new infrastructure. And I'll just kind of start with a historical perspective, very short, just to get a sense of what we're trying to do. And yeah, a picture from our office, quite young team as well. So when we think of infrastructure, now we call it intelligent infrastructure, but when we think of traditional infrastructure, we typically think about the roads in the city, about the water system in the city, be it pure drinking water or wastewater treatment or energy and heating, for example. This is very like passive infrastructure, essentially, where we had this model-based approach that we talked about earlier, where you typically had the infrastructure we have right now is something that creates better lives, essentially, for citizens, be it mobility, enabling us to travel faster from point A to B, be it health in terms of drinking water and wastewater treatment. I think actually wastewater treatment in itself doubled the expected lifetime for citizens when you start to have these sewage systems and drainage systems in place for cities. And then of course you have heating, which is also like a bare necessity for humans as well. But we're trying to say, okay, these solves very basic human needs. So where should we go from here? Because we have these in place, and it's something that's already being digitized in a somewhat a fashion. So in these traditional sectors where you before had, for example, for heating, one temperature sensor at a central location, well, today you have 1,000. And as I talked about before, where you had one time series before, you have pretty much 1,000 time series graphs now. So how can we leverage traditional infrastructure, and how can we maybe create kind of a higher abstraction level of infrastructure? And I'll just kind of elaborate what I mean by this. So right now we have infrastructure in place that kind of solve basic human needs, that enable us to live But how do we see infrastructure in the future? Infrastructure that increase livability and urban comfort for citizens as well. We start to see a lot of ideas for how that is solved in like hypermobility, like these electric scooters and so on. But how can we create a notion for livability when we think of, for example, air quality, noise levels as well? Because it's some parameters that actually also have a very large effect on how we live life, essentially. So how do we work with this? So in Montem we work with it digitally and physically. Physically in the sense that we create physical devices that monitor these parameters in a more wide or more extensive fashion that has been done before. And digitally in the way that we collect and analyze and visualize data. And I'll actually come with some very concrete examples here of how we do this. But we essentially create this holistic approach to saying creating a sensor network in a city can be seen as a new type of infrastructure, creating like more broad knowledge for citizens about their local environment. The first one we have, like the one we use as kind of the fabric, what we call the fabric of the intelligent city, is the city probe. So essentially creating a unit that measures particle pollution, rain, noise, light, UV, pressure, temperature, humidity, and can be mounted in lampposts quite easily. So just running off a solar panel, it can measure 24 hours a day, all year round. And then why would we need to measure all these different parameters? Well, we see that these parameters are somewhat interlinked when you start correlating them. So, for example, rain has an effect, or rain and humidity has an effect on particle pollution. And noise and particle pollution also have some kind of relationship as well. And yeah, a lot of these things can be used as dedicated as well, dedicated parameters. So rain has something to do with, if we can start measuring how much rain is hitting the streets, we can actually start forecasting how much water the wastewater treatment plants are expected to receive within, let's say, 10 minutes or 15 minutes of the water propagating the technical water system. So this is essentially our outdoor environmental sensor for measuring the urban environment or the health of the urban environment. But of course, the citizens do not live their lives within or outside, live it indoors. So starting to correlate what is happening outdoors with what is happening indoors is also something that is creating a lot of knowledge, at least. Because even though we have noise issues outdoors, we have particle pollution indoors, we have building facades that reduce noise, we have ventilation that filter particles. But still, it's very interesting to actually measure where the citizens are located, be it home, libraries, schools, daycares, and so on, because it's where they're actually at and where they're being affected by these parameters. So we have developed something called a room probe as well. So that's kind of the technologies from the city probe and just made relevant for indoors. And in this sense, we call it air quality, because indoor air quality is very different from outdoor air quality. CO2 is not a problem outdoors. You have a very standard level throughout the day, throughout the year, where in indoors it can vary a whole lot. It's the same with, let's see, particles. Particles outside can be peaking much higher than they can indoors due to ventilation. But we keep some of the same parameters. And of course also noise, because noise is both generated outside buildings but also inside buildings. And then you of course have the kind of standard indoor climate as temperature, humidity, room occupancy. And that's also something we look into, is simply we need to figure out where people are to actually say that we measure these types of levels of air quality, and we need to kind of know how many are actually affected by these levels. So room occupancy or the level of activity within a room is also something we're looking into, and that's actually done by if you see the bigger hole on the visualization here, that's actually a thermal imagery camera, so it sees heat profiles of people. So it's very GDPR compliant in that sense. And what builds all these products together? Well, that's the tool that I talked about before. It's called CityFlow. And I'll just show you a bit more about this, because to show what I meant by visualizations when I talked earlier. But it essentially combines the measurement from indoors and outdoors and creates this holistic view that we actually want to take, which we see as kind of the base for the urban planning of the future, the data-driven planning of the future, is that you have this kind of dashboard, this map-centric view of the whole city as it is right now, scrolling back through time to see how it has evolved, but also maybe scrolling a bit into the future to see how it could, or simulate how it could evolve. And we have CityFlow as like a web-based application, so it has different modules depending on which area of interest you have. So we have the environment, which is of course air quality and the noise levels and so on. We have buildings, so everything that goes on within the building. That could be, for example, room probe data, but that could also be usage data for heating, for electricity, water, and so on. And then we have traffic. And traffic is quite interesting as well. So this is a screenshot from one of the first versions of CityFlow. What we have visualized here is essentially the city of Aarhus. And I think it's actually, it's the downtown area. So first off, just to give a bit of context, you have like these green circles going up through the map. These are city probes. So those are the units that I showed before that actually measures noise and particle pollution and so on. And in this sense, you can see up in the top, we have chosen city probe. We've chosen noise as the parameter to visualize. And then we chose the Aarhus tag. So it's only city probes within Aarhus which are being visualized. Alongside the roads, you have like these green, orange, and red stripes. And that's actually based on GPS data. So that's people using their phone for navigation, using that to calculate average traveling times and so on. And that gives an expected congestion of that street. And that's of course can fluctuate quite a bit depending on if it's a low speed street or a main road and so on. But this is essentially what we want to showcase, because right now we see these GPS data, but we want to show almost each and every car to see this real-time perspective on the platform itself. Going a bit further, one of the newest screenshots, and this is from August this year, and you can see the slider in the bottom. That's kind of the temporal aspect of showcasing city data. So of course we have the real-time aspect, but typically there is no one watching data in real time just waiting for stuff to happen. They want to go back into time to investigate something they know happened. And in this sense, we have actually visualized two parameters to showcase somewhat correlation. First off, as you see, it's the city probe. It's particle pollution. It's particle or PM 2.5, so size 2.5, and again also tag. So that's actually the heat map. The heat map is let me just go back here. The heat map is visualizing the air quality, and then you see these columns go up through for the city probes as well, and that's visualizing noise. So this is 17 minutes to 6 in the morning, the 4th of August, and I can't remember if that's I think that's a Monday or something like that. It's at a weekday at least. And if we scroll a bit forward in time, 8:45, you see that the noise levels rise throughout the whole city. And actually, you see the one in the left bottom, or almost the left bottom, only increases slightly. And that's again how we want to visualize the real-time perspective or real-time changes of the city, because the city doesn't change uniformly, and in that sense we can't really use the model-based approach that we used earlier. And actually just between this presentation and the talk I gave earlier today, I had a meeting with one from the GIS technology department here in Aarhus, who actually also talked a bit about their spatial GIS suite, spatial suite that they use now. It doesn't have any real-time aspect built into it yet. You only have statical data sets, and you typically only get them, if you're very lucky, you get them each month, maybe only one time a year, and then you can update the system. And then the episodes that you wanted to investigate might be long gone or long lost. They've already been treated in the public media or whatever. So what we want to visualize here is simply the real-time aspect and how you can scroll through time without actually having to download a lot of Excel files or comma separated value files that you have to analyze yourself. It's something that gives an overview quite easily, at least. So moving a bit into the platform itself, I'll just quickly run through this because it's something that's in development and not really official yet, is buildings. So essentially what we want to be able to do is, of course, you see as here before, let me just see if I can go here, you have the 3D city or 3D buildings throughout the city. What we want to do is essentially being able to click on a building, in the beginning only, of course, publicly owned buildings, and give you an overview of the energy consumption of that building. So in this example here, it's I think the third largest city of Denmark, Aalborg, where you have chosen a school, and it showcases electricity consumption, water consumption, average temperature and noise levels throughout the building, and heat levels or heat usage throughout the city, throughout the building, sorry. And we really want to be able to showcase this throughout the whole city, so you're getting this both real-time aspect of monitoring the urban environment, but also the indoor environment. Because, of course, the outdoor environment has something to do with the citizens' health. In Aarhus, I think bad air quality relates to 20,000 sick days, so it's quite a big economical impact it has as well. And then we have the indoor here, where you can actually just save money on using less, which also fulfills CO2 goals as well. Yes. And then, of course, being able to benchmark different areas of the city. So choosing a parameter and drawing up a polygon saying this is maybe the northern part of the city, this is the southern part of the city, how do they compare? Because when you can start benchmarking comparative buildings or areas, you're going to start seeing maybe trends. It could be trends that relate to the socio-economical state of the different neighborhoods, or it can be something entirely different depending on traffic and so on. And of course see how these usages relate to budgets and so on. So of course, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, creating this digital twin, both indoor and outdoor. And then a short overview as well. As you see here in the top left, that's essentially what we want to show. You click a building, get a kind of a pop-up, very quick overview of the energy consumption, and then you can dive deeper into these more traditional histograms or column diagrams or time series graphs as well. Yes. So, and why do you want to do this? This is actually a quick end, just so I made sure that I could hold the timer. But I have some examples actually. Why do we need to measure this? So we've had the CityProbe network in Aarhus for quite a while. We have the first version out and we're upgrading to our CityProbe 2 now. And why do we need to measure? And it's actually something that we might have been a bit in doubt ourselves, because was there something we could measure that might not be able to be seen on these models or through this model-based approach? And what you have here on the screen is essentially a very traditional time series graph. What is on the x-axis is time. It's actually for 2 days. It's for the 1st of December and the 1st of January combined. And on the y-axis you have the particle pollution concentration of PM2.5. So the amount of particles per cubic meter in the air. And this is taken from a data set from Aarhus at least. And this is actually New Year's Eve. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but here in the beginning, this is during the day, New Year's Eve's day. You see some small peaks, no real trend. But actually around, I think it's 6 o'clock, you see a large peak. And what we find out by correlating that actually to the TV guide was that it is the Queen's New Year's speech. And also by looking into the street, what was happening. So in Denmark we have the tradition of listening to the Queen's New Year's speech, and right after, people typically, or families with children typically take their children out, light up some fireworks, and the fireworks of course affect the particle concentration through the air. So we can actually start seeing when people were working outside just after the Queen's speech. So we can almost time when the Queen's speech ended and when the New Year's fireworks started. And then of course, people put their kids to sleep, they eat dinner and all this, and typically just have an easygoing evening until, of course, you hit midnight, and you can almost set a clock after this data. So at that peak, you have 12 o'clock, pretty much, maybe plus minus a minute. But actually, we measure quite quickly when people start lighting up the fireworks for midnight. And that's, again, something that's quite interesting, because you start seeing through deferred parameter what people are actually doing. Well, they're having a good time. Maybe the party dies out. Let me just see if I can get the rest of the graph with. Yeah, here. So we know that people actually party to around 1:45. Then the fireworks pretty much just stop, and it slowly dies out until I think it's 5 in the morning. And then you can see, yeah, the day after it's pretty much just like maybe hangover or something like that, because nothing is happening at all throughout the city. So that's essentially what we're trying to do, is using data from all these different data sources to see how people live their lives. Because when we started seeing how they live their lives, you can actually start designing and planning the urban environment to fit how the lives are lived. Another example of this is water. This is taken from a water sensor also here in Aarhus. I think it's actually taken just before it hits the wastewater treatment plant, one of the largest wastewater treatment plants here in Aarhus. And it's actually these cycles you see is when people, the first peak you would see when you go from the 15th of July towards the 16th of July, is when people actually start waking up, taking a bath, making breakfast. And then around noon you have a kind of slow drop, and then it kind of goes up a bit again, and then that's actually when people start cooking. And then again we can actually see, even though we think we're very unique individuals, collectively we kind of do the same stuff at the same time. I think another example was actually from England, where they had to actually plan their energy production after a TV guide, because they would know that after a certain episode at one of the national channels, everybody would start making tea, and they would have a spike in the electricity consumption that would have to compensate through the production of electricity as well. So when you start measuring a lot of these different parameters, you actually get kind of a glimpse into how people live their lives, be it traffic, be it consumption of water, electricity, and of course there's a lot of privacy concerned with that. So in this sense, they're not they're anonymous in the way that this is for the whole city. You can't really tell one person from another doing this. But if you were to do a hyperlocal measurement system where you'd measure almost at each and every house, then you'd be able to see when that family would cook, when that family was maybe on vacation, because you would see it on the usage patterns. And by looking at all these usage patterns, we can actually start saying, how should we produce water or transport water? How should we plan our energy production in a more large-scale fashion, at least? And I think that is actually kind of the quick introduction, also just to not spend too much time and be open for questions as well. I'll just see if I can actually get back to my screen. Oh, Alfie, here we go. Maybe. If I can do that, I'm not sure actually. Okay, there we go. All right, I'll just stop sharing for now and be back on the screen myself here. All right. Any questions?
Excellent.
Otherwise,
Excellent.
I have other examples that I can show as well. But essentially, what we're trying to do is have as many data sources as possible, also in our CityFlow tool, and not really rely on building the sensors ourselves. So we actually rely on a lot of different providers, even competitors for air quality, because we see that the value is not in who gets the biggest market share for a specific sensor. That is simply getting as many parameters as possible in a collective place, so we can start correlating across these parameters and start actually making these real-time maps that showcases how people travel in car, on bike, on on foot as well, how they live their lives inside as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Christian, for your interesting presentation. I really appreciate it. I think that the feeling is shared by the audience because it was very, very fit and clear as the exposition. I've got a question. Talking about the importance of data for taking more conscious decision related to urban planning and so on. How much social science can support this kind of analysis?
So that's actually very interesting, because right now we're also kickstarting we talk about this data democratization, and we're actually seeing that citizens themselves can be sources of data, both in the way that they gather data through these citizen science projects, but also how they actually add value. Because what we've seen is that, of course, we can start measuring everywhere, looking for small challenges each and everywhere, but we can also have citizens actually validate their claims. So typically now citizens would come to the municipality saying, we have an issue with noise in these areas and so on and so forth. And they would have to present their case without having any data. But providing them with these smart, for some of the smart citizen kit I know of, actually enables them to get data that backs up their claim. And then you can actually start seeing where you have the largest issues, and you can start actually, in a sense, making citizens heard, because they can provide the data, but they can also provide the analysis, because they're living there every day. So they would say that's because we have morning deliveries for the nearby shops. They will also have these traffic levels in the morning. Can we maybe start working on a different delivery schedule or something like that? So including citizens and the whole social aspect in it is very important in actually creating a dialogue between municipality and citizen. Because it's kind of the citizens who are financing the investments made in roads and all this citywide infrastructure. So having them on board as well is actually quite interesting as well.
Yeah, making citizens like active sensors, basically.
Yes, exactly.
I've got another question related to the building module that you presented us before.
Yeah.
Are you gonna integrate a beam aspect in that module?
Yes, that's what we're looking into. Right now we have a very high-resolution 3D model of the entire city of Aarhus, which is paid for the municipality, and is actually out as open data as well. So it's not one we can utilize. I think the only limitation we have is that the municipality's laptops is not fast enough to render a full city in high resolution, and going back through time and seeing all the changes. So we're trying to see select buildings at like high resolution buildings 3D wise, and then also coupling it with like plan drawings and all this building related material that you might have in terms of fire escapes, evacuation plans and all this. But we're very lucky, at least in Denmark, that, for example, for electricity, we have a fully automated national system for all usage of electricity. That means that I only have to send a link to the technical department and in the municipality, and then it can actually give me access to all their wireless sensors or electricity sensors, usage sensors throughout all the buildings, and then I can easily get that data into our system. And that's what makes the buildings module possible, because if you were to adapt it or integrate it for each and every system that exists out there, that would be a hard task. So having this unified solution actually helps quite a bit. But it's something we are still actively looking into, at least here in Denmark for the beginning, and then we're kind of expanding on that as we go. I actually think we'll go to Italy soon as well. There's a lot of interesting development projects going on, for example in Milano as well, where some of these technologies could be interesting.
Yeah, indeed. So, for consumption data, you told us that you are collecting them from, I don't understand precisely.
So the way it works is there's a wide array of sensors used for measuring this. And the good thing is that we don't have to touch this. They actually create a national initiative to make all these sensors compliant with this national database of energy consumption data. So we don't have to think about which sensor it comes from, because it's already in a unified format that we can utilize. Be it from Aarhus, be it from Aalborg or Copenhagen, it's the same. It's kind of the same data essentially. It's just from another place, and that makes it a lot easier.
Yes, sounds like an excellent starting point.
Yes,
if you need to deal with Italian case, it's gonna be a bit of a messy situation in this sense.
I would still say that it can be still a bit messy, and that's also the challenges with IoT and smart city is it's still something that's maturing in terms of data models, in terms of how we exchange data and so on. So everything is fluctuating a bit, and you still have to somewhat agree continuously about how you change or just transfer data between systems.
Sure. Any other question from the audience? Curiosity? Nothing.
Okay. I just want to showcase one thing before I stop.
Please.
And that was the example that I talked about before. I'll just start the screens here again here. And you might be able to see it now. So that was the MIT project that I talked about. And it's just to see like how creative can we actually be. So this is this mobile measurement station that simply measures air quality. It measures, I think it measures noise levels as well actually. It has a thermal imagery camera, so it can see the heat actually on building facades as well. And it's also showcasing how that can actually look. So this is actually a map from the Sensible City Lab. They have a platform for actually utilizing this data. I think they're in New York at the moment. I think they're actually expanding to, I think it was Stockholm as well. But what they're actually visualizing for each dot here is a measurement. And it's simply a cab or a waste truck driving around the city. And what is being viewed here is the thermal imaging camera. So the more purple it is, the colder it is, the more orange-reddish it is, the hotter it is. And that's actually showcasing which building facades might need a change of windows, might need more insulation and so on. And that's also providing a service from, for example, a municipality to building owners, in the sense that they can actually be very proactive and say that we see you have issues with these and these buildings and these windows. It would, of course, take a small investment to have them changed, but the payoff in the long run would save you money. And that's also, again, what are the new services that municipalities have to provide for their businesses, for their citizens as well. And I think this is a very creative approach to actually saying that the city can actually help citizens or building owners managing their home and so on. And it's the same with road quality. I think they use an accelerometer to actually detect potholes as well. So it's, again, finding out where we have issues in the city and being very proactive, not waiting till some citizen takes their phone and calls in and saying that they have potholes here and here, but actually annotating these very live, very dynamic, hopefully almost in real time, the day it happens. So we can actually start having a backlog of all of these issues, how we can solve them, and when they are expected to be solved. And I think that's also that insight into the municipality seen from the citizens are actually very interesting. So you start actually seeing how the city works and how the city is continuously being improved and developed through these very transparent initiatives. And I think, that was kind of the example that I wanted to showcase. Just another picture where you dive into a neighborhood and you see which buildings have issues with heating and so on. Very interesting approach, at least. Yeah. And I don't know if there's any other questions at this time. Otherwise, I'll be here Thursday as well, 11 o'clock, and then I'm open for any question as well.
Yeah, thank you very much again for your presentation, Christian. It was very interesting and also relevant in terms of thematics that you touch. I haven't got any other question, but this last bit that you gave us was very interesting. This usage of the thermal camera has got a lot of potential, usage for detecting various aspects related to buildings health. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing this this topic as well. If there aren't any other question, I thank you all of you for being present today, this morning and this afternoon, and I will invite you for tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We will present our solution for public lighting, the management of networks. So in that case, we will introduce the job that we did with Gruppo Era. Then after, the day after, as Christian already told you, we have got the pleasure to host again Christian for another interview with the expert, and in the afternoon an event related to smart agriculture technologies, where we will have the pleasure to host Lucia from Byte Consulting. She will talk about these topics and these technologies related to smart agriculture. So thank you again, and I wish you all the best, and hope to see you again soon in this virtual booth.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking your time to listen, and hopefully see you Thursday, or for Eduardo's sake, tomorrow. And have a great day when you get off from work and so on as well, and enjoy the day.
You too.
All right.
Thank you very much.